Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Dadas Show, coming to you from World Vision Kenya, the regional headquarters here in Karen, Nairobi. I'm your host, Ashiko Mbune. Now, the Dadas Show aspires to promote the spirit of sisterhood and solidarity. And we do this by creating a safe and open platform for women of all races, of all creeds, and from every part of Kenya to discuss issues pertaining to their lifestyle, their careers, their families, and everything that affects them in one way or another. So, karibuni sana. Now, 8th March 2024 is globally recognized as the International Women's Day. This day is a focal point in the women's rights movement. And of course, on this particular day, we focus on issues such as gender inequality. We focus on issues such as reproductive rights. And we also look at sexual and violence sexual violence and abuse towards women. This year's conversation and this year's theme has been around investing in women to accelerate progress. Now, according to the United Nations, gender inequality remains one of the greatest human rights challenges in Africa. That said, Kenya has made strides, actually significant strides, in women empowerment and, of course, in promoting gender equality. That said, however, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done for women to get the same legal rights as men, especially in areas that are covered by women. So joining me today is a group of ladies who have dedicated their time, have dedicated their energy and their resources to ensure that women get a seat on the table. We will be getting insights about this year's theme and some, recommendations that should be done moving forward. How can we invest in women so that we can accelerate the progress within our borders? As always, I invite you at home to take part in this and any conversation that we may be having on all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1. You can also reach me directly at Ashiko, the host, across all social media platforms. So before we get into this very, very exciting conversation, let's take a look at the following feature.
The International Women's Day is a global day to celebrate the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women and girls. The day is marked annually on 8th March with a focal point on issues such as gender equality, reproductive rights and violence and abuse against women. This year's theme is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. The theme highlights key issues relating to investing in women as a human rights issue, calling for urgent action in ending poverty through implementing gender-responsive financing and shifting to a green economy and care society to amplify women's voices. The United Nations General Assembly declared 8th March the International Women's Day in 1975. The day is devoted to addressing pertinent issues on women such as gender equality, reproductive rights, violence and abuse against women, discrimination based on sex, exclusion, and women's role in society, among others. Kenya joined the rest of the world to commemorate the day to honor women's contribution to socio-economic and political development. The symbol for International Women's Day is a female gender symbol. It is usually accompanied by the colors purple, green, and white. According to the International Women's Day website, purple stands for dignity and justice, green for hope, and white for purity. So on this day, celebrate the women in your life if you are able to.
As mentioned before the break, today we are joined by a group of individuals, ladies, who have dedicated their time, their resources and their energy to ensure that women get a seat on the table. And of course, going in accordance to this world's International Women's Day theme, which is invest in women to accelerate progress. So allow me to karibisha my wonderful guest, who we will get to interact with them during this episode. So next to me, I have Jacqueline Makoha, who is the Director Gender at the State Department of Gender and Affirmative Action in the Ministry of Gender Culture. and Arts and Heritage. Next to her, we have Susan Wairimo, who is a gender advocate and a human rights specialist. So, of course, we cannot talk about getting a seat on the table without bringing in legal matters, yeah? So, karibu sana, Susan. And finally, we have Jidaida Ganera, who is a Livelihoods and Resilience Advisor, World Vision Kenya, who are our gracious hosts today. Of course, I cannot fail to acknowledge my wonderful audience who take time week in, week out to sit with me as we discuss issues after issues, contentious issues, with the hope of actually getting a solution. So, asanteni sana and karibuni sana to Dadas Show. Welcome to everybody here. And for you at home, karibu sana for this episode. So, to get the ball rolling, I'll start off with you, Jacqueline. So, kwanza, asante sana for making it here. Now, please tell us what you do, and perhaps you can tell us what role you play in promoting gender inclusion in the government of Kenya.
Okay, thank you so much, Ashiko. As you've heard, my name is Jacqueline, and I work for the State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action. Within the State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action, we are the government's policy arm responsible for gender policy management. So you'll find that all the national policies touching on gender issues are domiciled in our ministry.
Yes.
So we are responsible for developing these policies and follow up to see to it that they're being implemented across board. And so in our bid to push for matters gender equality and women's empowerment, and I know when we talk about women's empowerment without mentioning men, the assumption is that we are only empowering women and leaving men behind.
Yeah.
But that's not true. We just make reference to that so that we deal with the historical injustices that women have faced over time. Because looking at our society, even as it is right now, men and women are not at the same level across sectors. So we must recognize the inequalities or the deficiencies that we have between the two genders. Then we give some uplifting to one, which in this sense is the women.
Yes.
So as a State Department for Gender, of course, we as I've mentioned before, on policy issues, of course, these policies are anchored within the Constitution. So on matters gender equality, we make reference to the constitutional provision in Article 27 on gender equality and freedom from discrimination. And so in so doing, the State Department came up with a national policy for gender and development, which gives guidance to national institutions and indeed even civil society and Kenyans at large on what we ought to do to ensure that women and men are at the same level across sectors in matters gender. One of the other aspects I would just like to highlight that the State Department does is to promote gender mainstreaming across all government ministries, departments, agencies, and even counties. So we ensure that government institutions are inclusive. And here, when you talk about inclusivity, we are looking at employment, how are institutions in terms of men and women representation.
What is the ratio?
Yes, the ratio.
Yeah.
And of course, that we make reference to the provision that, there shouldn't be more than 2/3 of either gender.
Yes.
So as a department, we look out for that. But also on issues inclusivity, we are looking at men, women of different categories. Are young people involved? Are men and women with disabilities involved? Do we have ethnic diversities within our institutions, etc.? Beyond that, at the workplace, are men and women well catered for? We have to recognize certain uniquenesses, like for instance, women's reproductive roles.
Yes.
So if you have women of reproductive ages within your institution, do your administrative procedures take care?
Do they cater
of
for that?
their plight?
So does this same umbrella, when women are seeking for more days of of perhaps maternity leave, does that fall under your docket?
Yes, we advocate for that. So, of course, maternity leave, is well provided for within the public service, but also just going a step beyond.
Yes.
Like, for instance, if Jackie here is a lactating mother and she needs some flexible working hours, then we build the capacities of those in decision-making positions to make provision for that.
Yeah.
As well as even providing for lactating mothers rooms. It's actually a requirement that public institutions have that in place, so that lactating mothers can maybe find a place to express milk and be comfortable as they go about their work.
What they're doing.
But most
yes.
importantly, maybe just as I finish, institutions having gender policies in place, so that even as they mainstream gender, it's mainstreamed within a certain framework. So gender policy, but also a policy on gender-based violence and sexual harassment. We know these are issues that are rampant within institutions, whether in government or in non-governmental organizations. So there is also that requirement that we have a policy framework to address these issues should they arise, but also prevent, because of course prevention is better than cure.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for what you're doing. Actually, from what you've explained, you have most of the areas covered. Now, I think the million-dollar question is, what is the implementation rate? How many organizations out there, both in the private and the public sector, how many organizations are adhering to that? How many people have a lactating room? How many women are, how many women are still enduring sexual harassment in the offices? So we'll touch on that a little bit later, and I think that's the cry for today. I want to move on to Susan. Susan, you're a gender advocate, you're a gender activist and an advocate. Karibu sana Dadas show. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and of course, based on your professional opinion. Like we said, we definitely have to hear what does the law say about this. And I'm so happy to hear what the government says about this, what does the law, the policies that have already been passed on. But what, in your professional opinion as a gender activist, what are the systematic barriers that hinder progress in achieving women empowerment and the gender equality in Kenya?
Thank you, Ashiko, for having me in your safe space, because that is part of what we advocate for. My name is Susan Wairimo. I run a community-based organization in Kajiado County called Inspire Teenagers Foundation, and also representing girls and young women from Kajiado in a project called She Leads. So my work basically is to work with adolescent girls and young women as a young woman myself.
Yes.
Also looking at it from the community and the societies that we come from. We see that girls have been limited for the longest time. Allow me to share briefly about what pushes me into wanting to advocate for the rights of girls.
Absolutely.
7 years ago, I was in high school. Just as any other young girl in school, I had dreams of finishing school and getting out, going to university, getting a good life, living a good life, and giving my mom the best.
Yeah.
But as it happens, you find that when girls are in school, there's some little bit of peer pressure, lack of information about reproductive health. We've not been told about consent, about respect, and even when it is told to us in the community, in school, in churches, it has been sugar-coated. And I found myself at a point where, having come from a slum area back in Ngong, I got pregnant. And it was not my desire to. And I was at a situation where I had to choose between school and parenting at a very young age. And this is not just myself. It is what happens to many other girls back in our community. Girls are limited because of different reasons. She mentioned about access to reproductive health services. When you get down into our communities, how many girls, how many women have fully been told about their reproductive health and being able to even make informed decisions about what they want with their life and with their bodies? I got pregnant, but I had to stay in school for a whole 9 months, trying to focus with school and pregnancy at the same time,
That can't have been easy.
no one had prepared me for it. But you find there are girls who will get themselves in that situation and have to drop out of school. So if they drop out of school, that means that they have been limited academically. And that means their chances of getting a good life has gone down. And you look at it, girls get pregnant and due to different reasons.
Yes.
Mine was out of peer pressure and the community that I was coming from, which is more of poverty rates. But look at it, last year we were all advocating for 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. How many girls in our communities back there have been subjected to violence? How many of them even get to a point of speaking out? That is very difficult because we have subjected women and girls to not speak about issues that they go through. And if they get to speak about it, we get to victimize them. What were you dressed on? Why did you go to that house? Why were you outside at 10 o'clock? And even when they become victims to sexual and gender-based violence, how many safe spaces do we have for these girls to even go and get rescued?
Yes.
How are we involving men and boys? Because men and boys are the perpetrators of some of this violence. How are we involving them at the community level to be able to help us empower girls and be able to ensure that we cut down on such violence which limit girls and women from achieving their fullest potential?
Thank you so much. You definitely have mentioned a very key barrier, obviously, to gender equality in Kenya. If one gender is always looked at as the lesser, you know, if one gender is looked at, these are the perpetrators and these are the victims, I believe then we cannot sit here and say, oh, you know what, you're better than me, or we have gender equality. And I like what you've mentioned about education, because I think education is always the greatest equalizer. I believe that because at the end of the day, when the test paper or when the results come in or whatever, if you're being tested, the paper does not come and say this is for Wanjiko and this is for Joroge. So whatever you get is always your shield and your armor when you're fighting gender equality. I have the same rights because I have the same qualifications and I have the same credits. So by all means, I deserve a seat on that particular table. Thank you so much, Susan. Now, next, we will move on to Jadida Ganira. Thank you so much. Now, what and how is World Vision tailoring programs that are empowering women, especially addressing the needs of the girls and the women in marginalized areas? Because in Nairobi, in the urban centers, I feel like there's an infrastructure for women and girls to get assistance. But like what she's saying, in an informal sector, where women are still being looked at as the lesser, or in a place like Garissa where they don't even have, certain parts of Garissa, Northeastern, where they don't even have access to education. What is World Vision doing? What are some of the programs that you have put in place to reach, women and girls in marginalized areas?
Thank you, Ashiko, for having me. And as you rightly put it, we are celebrating 50 years of impactful work in our communities.
Oh, that's lovely.
And to start with, we are guided by key principles as we are doing our programming. One of them is to ensure that there is equal access to and control of our resources that we have in our communities. We enhance participation for everybody, both male and women, and even the other inclusive, other differently abled people within our communities. We also enhance the decision making for everyone within the communities that we are working, and also ensure that we challenge systems to make sure that they are accommodative to make sure that everybody can thrive, and of course ultimately for the well-being of the children, because that's what World Vision works for. And as we do our programming, one, we are very intentional to make sure that we include the women and girls within the areas that we work. And as you rightly put it, most of our work is in the marginalized areas. We work in the ASAL areas where there is not so much opportunities, especially for economic empowerment for women and girls. And as she has put it, most of them find themselves with the different vulnerabilities that exclude them from even gaining formative education. And so they find themselves with the lack of skills that can propel them even to dignified work. And so as we start our programming, one of the things that we do is just to identify participatory identification of the opportunities that exist for both male and women, and especially the girls and women who are within the communities, just to look at what is it that they can do within this area. And as we look at the opportunities that exist, we do analyze to see what are some of the barriers that prevent them from exploiting these opportunities. And this would form the focus of the programming that we do, just basically to see whether we are able to reduce the barriers and eliminate them if possible. And as we do that, we are looking at two key pathways in terms of enhancing economic empowerment for the girls and women. And the first one is enhancing the ability to get an employment, wage employment. And basically, once you're able to identify what kind of a pathway you'd want to take in terms of wage, we provide vocational training opportunities for these girls who dropped out of school. We help them to get attachment to places where they can get the skills. We also do mentorship and coaching and apprenticeship opportunities. So that pathway is really straightforward. But now we have the pathway that majority of the women and girls take up within our communities, and it is for self-employment. Once we look at the opportunities within the communities, one of the things you realize they don't have the skills. So one of the things we do is to make sure that we build their capacity in terms of doing their own employment. So we build capacity on entrepreneurship skills, ensure they're able to manage their businesses very well, help them to know how to manage their finances. And once we do that, the next thing now is to look at linking them to the right places where they can get help. And basically one of the things that we really promote is enhancing the ability to manage their own financial resources, which is very key. And so we have we promote the women saving groups because it's a local effective way of people, women within the villages to access finances, because you know some of them are differentiated by the formal banking systems. So they're able to come together, they save together, they borrow there to enhance their entrepreneurship activities. And as they keep growing, we link them to formalized financial institutions. Like, for example, we have the Vision Fund here that gives them more income that can enhance their business opportunities. And as they continue working together, you realize when the woman has the money, now it starts challenging the power dynamics within the household.
Of course.
And so World Vision, we have we bring on board now the men. Just to sit with this woman who has been able to get her own money, is able to get money from her own economic empowerment. And they sit together, we bring them together as a family. Then we look at, do you even have a vision for your family? What are you taking your family together as the woman and the man in the house? And so we're able to guide them through coming up with the household vision. They're able to come and plan on how to budget and manage their finances. And that then they can start now bringing on board their resources together as a family. And ultimately within those villages, we bring them together to what we call social capital building. And that's why we enhance their building into production groups. If they're doing in on-farm and off-farm enterprises, value chain development, we bring them together so that they can access markets, they can access more extension services, they can be able to get trainings together as a team, they can market their produce and get more monies. And so building that social capital is our key sustainability out of that, so that within wherever they are, even if World Vision is not there, they can access the private sector, they can access services from the government, and they can continuously get the support that they need to continue to strengthen their household economic empowerment. So as you are looking, we not only focus on the girls and the women, but we are looking at the whole household.
In and I like that, because I think that's what has been happening lately is, and I know that this is a conversation that most probably we will have to have another time on Dadas show, is there's a lot of mechanisms and structures that have been put in place to support the girl child. And we are so happy, including this particular forum that we have here, you know, and we are so happy about that. But somewhere, somehow in the process, I feel like the boy child was left behind a little bit. So I love an approach from any organization, government or otherwise, that comes and says, okay, fine then. So this is what we primarily came here, but we're not only going to focus on you. You're not only focusing, you've called it the household capital. I love it, social, and then you move on from the household and you move on. So when you're growing together. Let me move on to you, Jacqueline. We've talked about protecting girls and women, especially in marginalized communities. What comprehensive measures has the government taken, is being implemented, or is in the making or in the pipeline to safeguard these vulnerable individuals from some of the harmful practices that have made it a little bit easier for them to access equitable opportunities?
Okay, thank you, Ashiko, and I'll just pick up from where you left your last statement about a holistic approach.
Yes.
So one of the notable measures that we have undertaken as a State Department for Gender, we coordinate a national platform at national and county level called the Gender Sector Working Group. So we have the National Gender Sector Working Group, and we have county sector gender working group, county gender sector working groups in all the 47 counties. And this platform is structured in sub, thematic areas. So we have women in leadership and decision making, we have socioeconomic empowerment, we have peace and security, we have gender-based violence sub committees, and the latest kid on the block is actually the male engagement and inclusion subcommittee. Why did we think of coming up with this subcommittee is because we can't operate in a cocoon as if gender issues are about women. That's actually a fallacy. We need each and everyone on board to address the inequalities. When you look at our communities, most of our communities are patriarchal in nature. What does that mean? It means that men are the decision makers. They're actually the cultural gatekeepers. And most of the inequalities against women come from cultural norms and beliefs.
Which is true.
So for us to effectively address this negative or retrogressive cultural practices, we have to have men on board as decision makers. We have to sensitize men and boys to see that some of these things that we make our women go through are actually retrogressive, and they actually put them down. And then on other cultural practices like FGM, for instance, the government has a myriad of programs and initiatives. We have some community dialogues that have been going on, again recognizing the cultural structures, the decision makers. So we have had some cultural leaders make declarations against FGM. We have some cross-border interventions and declarations that have clearly put in black and white that they'll work with us in fighting these negative cultural practices. So we have community level approaches, but we also have a whole of government approach. For instance, on issues teenage pregnancies, we collaboratively work with the Ministry of Education. Like for us as a gender department, we are very keen to follow up with the Ministry of Education in a way that if there are any girls that fall pregnant along the way in their schooling, they go back to school, they are not deterred from picking up
from
where they left and go back to school. And also, like now we have a robust program on sanitary towels. She mentioned about the many challenges that girls face. Not to say that boys don't have challenges, but we look at it and see, what are these very unique challenges that will push, one gender down. And one of them is the issue of menses. We know that there are communities, there are communities where girls do not go to school because during their menses. So that's why through our department, the government has this program to procure sanitary towels for school-going girls, so that then they are distributed in order to keep them in school. And we've seen that this has even enhanced retention of girls in school.
Yeah.
So and also, you know, I talked about the socioeconomic empowerment programs. We have the Women Enterprise Fund, which was, you know, just last year digitized. So now women and youth young girls are able to access finances through a digital platform, and this was reached upon to cut out on bureaucracies. So just at your click,
Just have your phone wherever you are, in
yes,
whatever part of Kenya you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to ease accessibility to the funds. But of course, we also have capacity building interventions within the department that ensure that, you know, women and young people are prepared even as they get into their entrepreneurial ventures, that they are able to run their businesses well and to prosper themselves.
Sometimes people are sitting down, even maybe from Nairobi, who have access maybe to a phone or a laptop, and they do not know that these initiatives are here. Maybe if you can just tell us briefly, how can one who is at home, how can a lady at home, how can a gentleman at home, how do they sign up, how can they be part of it, how can they support, how can they sponsor some of these initiatives?
Yes, you know, thankfully we are in a digital era. So of course we, you know, as a department, we have our website where all the information is there. We have our social media platforms, our Twitter pages, our it's now X, or do we still call it Twitter?
Yes,
or it's
X. It is X.
Facebook pages, and you know that currently you can access government services by dialing 254 hash, I believe. Then there'll be a listing of services, among which, like the Women Enterprise Fund, for instance, is one of them.
Yeah.
But also just to mention about also, you know, we have the Women Enterprise Fund, which is a loan, of course, with very minimal interest. But we have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund that is patronized by the county women MPs, commonly known as the women reps.
Yes.
And for they offer grants that don't have to be repaid, but you know, community groups, whether youth, women or persons with disability, organize themselves in groups, come up with projects, and they are funded through the
I like
national.
that. I like that, and I feel like that would be
action.
very good information. And I know majority of people do not have that information because this is Mwananchi money. You know, the internet, social media is a treasure trove of information. So you cannot sit there and dwindle your thumbs and say, "Oh yeah, I do not know this." So I have a final question to you, Jadida, before we go. As a woman in corporate world and leadership opportunities, what advice do you have for women who are watching us right now? Young girls who are watching us, who are on fast track for promotions or to start their own business. You know, what do you tell them about leadership?
Thank you. I think the first thing is to be self-aware in terms of what is your abilities, what are your capacities, what are your aspirations, and once you discover yourself, the next thing is to have a vision, a career vision. What is it that you want to achieve as a professional? And the vision that you have will guide your personal investments into yourself in terms of extra education that you need to look for, what community of practice you need to join, what other avenues of building your skills would you want to pursue because of the vision that you have, and of course making sure that you're able to be the best that you can.
Yes.
I talk about being the command in your space, and that comes by self-investing into knowledge, and of course you need to identify a mentor, the person who will walk with you through your career path to make sure that they guide you and lead you into the place that you're aspiring to go.
Yes.
And as you have a mentor, you also need to have a role model. Who is it that you're emulating and following up? And finally, I think for me, I draw my wisdom and ultimate guidance from God.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I hope you have a pen and a paper. We will be right back for the question and answer session. You can send us your questions. You can send us your feedback. Remember, on all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 or my personal pages at Ashiko, the host, across all social media platforms. So we're going to take a very small break, and then we will be back for the question and answer session. Don't go far away. Hello and welcome to the second part of Dadas show. If you're just joining us, well, you have missed quite a wonderful first session. But fear not, we are now doing the question and answer session, which will give you an opportunity to actually catch up on the conversation of the day, which was in regards to the International Women's Day 2024, which fell on 8th March 2024. The theme of this year was Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. We've had an opportunity to interact and to engage different individuals, different wonderful ladies who've given us their insight on how we can invest in women, of course, to accelerate the progress of this great nation. Of course, we are now in the question and answer session, which will give an opportunity to our wonderful audience to interact with the panel if they have questions. If you have questions at home or any feedback on this and any other show, please ensure to join us on all our social media platforms and interact with us at KBC Channel 1. You can also join me on my Facebook and all the other social media platforms at Ashiko the host. Now, to get the question and answer session started, we have our first question from Doris, who has a question for Jedida, who happens to be from World Vision.
Thank you so much. My name is Doris Ngonga. I'm the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Coordinator for one of the projects we have at World Vision called Thrive. So my question is, given that women and girls in Kenya face a lot of vulnerabilities, what are the opportunities for collaborations to ensure that they have equal support? Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful question. You know, I think to support each other, we need to come together, including companies, organizations, individuals, churches, communities, and, such, like-minded individuals. Jadida.
Thank you. Rightly put it. And to be able to address these issues, it's a collective action, and I think she's already talked about that. And the key unit of collaboration would be the community, exactly where societal norms, perceptions, and beliefs are constructed. And this is where we want to sit down with the key leaders, the gatekeepers of these societal norms, and try to sit down and interrogate, why are these barriers there? What are the solutions that we can have and plans that would give women and girls an opportunity to thrive? And as we come out of the community, I think that is the most sustainable way. But of course, we have the legal frameworks. We have the government that is in charge of coming up with the policies that support equal access and participation of women and girls. We have the civil society, which also works collaboratively in terms of enhancing the implementation of these policies. And also we cannot forget the private sector, because they play a critical role in offering the opportunities for women and girls to thrive, in providing training, skills, grants, and also any other opportunity that the girls and women may have. So we have also the research institutions who are in charge of collecting data so that we can make data-driven decisions that can come up with solutions that are sustainable to address the key things that are real, affecting the communities that we work. So it's a collective action. It calls for everyone, both men, women, the communities, and everyone within the community to be able to provide that thriving opportunity for girls and women.
Thank you so much, Jadida. Doris, I hope your question has been answered.
Yes, thank you.
Asante sana. Now, our next question is from Brenda. Brenda, you have a question?
Thank you so much. My name is Brenda Olenja. I work as a donor relations liaison with World Vision Kenya. And my question is to you, Jackie. Now, considering the cultural and societal norms that often hinder women's progress, what is the government doing to address these attitudes and mindsets so as to provide a safer and more supportive environment where women can thrive?
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. And as we are all aware, I think culture is a very sensitive issue, and so it calls for a multifaceted approach. So government alone cannot completely, single-handedly address cultural norms and beliefs, especially the negative ones, because of course not all culture is bad. So as government, I mentioned earlier, when dealing with issues around FGM and other negative cultural practices, there's been collaboration with the cultural leaders, cultural gatekeepers within the various cultural settings, just to have that conversation, creating awareness, sensitizing them about the pitfalls of some of the practices. The government also has a stake in the socialization process, particularly through the education system. So the government is keen to see to it that our curriculum is, from the get-go, from basic education level, also addressing some of these cultural norms and beliefs. Most importantly, I think for us to effectively address negative cultural norms and beliefs, we as citizens have a role.
Yes.
Because socialization starts at birth.
At home, yeah.
So what are we feeding our children from, even when they're learning to talk, they're learning to carry, to go about their activities. So I believe that you and I have a key role as nurturers of our communities to socialize our children against these negative cultures. So it's a whole of government, it's a whole of society approach. Thank you.
That's an excellent question, Brenda. And, very well put, Madam Makoha. We have our next question coming from a gentleman who's in our audience. We really appreciate you here because, like we say, gender inequality is not a fight for men. It's not a fight for men against women. It's men and women fighting together and holding hands for a better tomorrow. So, karibu sana, Bwana Harun. Kindly give us your question.
Thank you, Ashiko. My name, as you've put it, is Haron Kadieda. I'm the Technical Advisor for Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion here at World Vision. So my question again goes to you, Madam Director. I know there are many policies by the government and acts of parliament that tackle issues to do with gender inequality, sexual harassment and others. But don't you think, together with me, that the government should probably do more on the area of disability? I know we have the Persons with Disability Act, but don't you think we should focus a little bit more now on the disabled, especially on the disabled women at the rural areas?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that question. And just to mention that already there's something happening, many interventions within government happening. Now, I know it's usually very challenging to divorce disability from gender, but in terms of programming within the government, I'm sure you know that there exists a National Council for Persons with Disability that is a government institution with the mandate of promoting issues of disability for both men and women. But in recognition that you can't talk about gender without going into the intersectionalities, at least within the State Department for Gender, as we are mainstreaming gender in the government ministries, departments and agencies, we always take into consideration the issue of disability. You must be aware of the government's performance contracting policy, which has different indicators. So gender has been one of them and disability is one of them. So we monitor an aspect of it, but the bulk of it is monitored by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. So they have an elaborate framework of pushing the disability agenda and also promoting disability mainstreaming at that level. I know we are not doing so well yet, but I believe that the small little steps will take us somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with you, Madam Makoha. I think at the end of the day, step by step, I think Rome was not built in a day, especially when it comes to, to certain matters. I don't know if that answer is satisfactory yeah, so, slowly by slowly, we'll come back and we will task you and we'll say, so far, tumefika wapi? Madam Director, we will do that. So our next question of the day is from Sandra. Sandra has her question.
My name is Sandra Itenya. I'm an admin officer at World Vision, and my question is to the director. I know the government is doing an amazing job to enforce some of the policies, and there's been a question that has been in the spaces. The 3 months that we are getting for lactating mothers, what is the government doing? Because we know that it's not enough to have a lactating mother come back to work after 3 months. They are not mentally stable to leave their baby at home. There are those who have preterm babies, and the 3 months that is in the law is really not enough for them to actually go back to work. So what is the conversation, or what is the government doing on giving an extension for the months, the extending the 3 months
the maternity leave.
maternity leave?
I think this has been progressive, realizing the circumstances within which mothers are operating in. And I think these are issues that we, when we get to the level of amending laws, the Kenyan law requires for public participation, and so all these sentiments will be brought to the table. So the law as it is, and now talking from my personal experience,
yes,
ordinarily maternity leave is counted from the date of delivery. Yes, but then the essence for us as a Department for Gender, through our capacity building and sensitization forums that we have with the institutions as well as the general public, has always been, let's not handle human beings as one. Even women are not homogeneous. So just the way you've indicated, deliveries are not the same for everyone. So yes, the law provides for the 3 months, but then we sensitize decision makers that when you're handling a staff who's just from maternity leave, it's good for you as a supervisor to have that human face. So you're not dealing with a robot. Be keen to listen to their circumstances. And that's why we advocate for, beyond the maternity leave, provide for flexible working hours. Because we are the same government that is promoting exclusive breastfeeding. So for a staff to exclusively breastfeed for 6 months, it means they can't work 8 to 5.
She can't have 8 hours. Yeah, she can't have 8 hours during the day.
And so supervisors should be flexible to allow lactating mothers, based on their unique needs, to have that flexibility in terms of work. And this applies not just for maternity. You find that there are also staff who have children with disabilities. Maybe they need to go for therapy sessions. So just being, for those of you who are gender specialists, you know about the gender analysis. So you must have, employ that for you to know the specific needs and allow for that flexibility among staff, so that you also have optimum performance. Because as a parent or as a caregiver, you wouldn't concentrate at work when you know either you need to take care of a small baby or you need to take care of a sick family member, and so on. So I know this is something that we are progressively advocating for, but given the circumstances, we advocate for working within the context and also being specific to the needs of the staff.
So our next question is from Millicent. Millicent has a question. Karibu sana, Millicent.
Thank you, Ashiko. So my name is Millicent Muigai. I am working in the digital media space, and my question is for Susan.
We've heard about funding, we've heard about grants, we've heard about committees. And as someone who runs a community-based organization, how have you seen the impact of the efforts that the government has done and private sector has done for your organization?
I'd like to say that you're having so many young feminists in our communities, but very little has been done to support more so grassroots women and community-based organizations like mine in the community. You will find that in as much as the government is doing a lot, I've had Madam talking about distribution of sanitary towels. I know it's government, but I'll bite on their neck a little bit. You find that those resources are being given into schools. But the same schools you go to do mentorship, you find that girls have not received pads for close to 2 years. And you ask yourself, what is it that government is doing in actually implementing whatever they have written on paper in the community? And my feeling is this: in as much as we are having all these conversations, let us go back into our communities. These organizations that are giving shelters to girls, organizations that are supporting children of young mothers who are supposed to go back to school, organizations that are supporting girls with uniforms, with basic education needs. How can we go back into supporting them? Even when it comes to funding, we are talking about investing in women. Right now, if a woman wants to go and open a business or even apply for funding, there is so much requirement that will be needed of her, being that they are in the grassroots community. Why not listen to their stories? Why not invest in their stories? Why not invest in exactly what they're doing into the community instead of asking for so many paperwork, while in real sense you can see the work that is being done in the community.
Asante sana for that response. Our final question of the day is from one Mr. Bernard. Bernard, karibu sana Dadas Show.
I'm Bernard Owino, also a staff here at World Vision. My question goes directly to Madam Akoa. The 2/3 gender rule, which I believe is a key milestone rule here in Kenya, and I believe its implementation will actually enable country realize the gender equity. But this implementation of this has faced a lot of challenges, and indeed public institutions are grappling with it, and even courts have made pronouncements on the same. Are there deliberate efforts or actions from your department or within government to enable this be realized within the shortest period?
Thank you so much for that question. And this is actually a live process, ongoing. First and foremost, interestingly, there's been actually 15 attempts to implement the not more than 2/3 gender principle in the Constitution. So we are on the 16th as we are speaking right now. I hope most of you have seen, there's been a lot of debate around it. Just last year in August, our cabinet secretary put together a multi-sectoral working group on the realization of the not more than 2/3 gender principle that brings together state and non-state actors to propose a formula for implementation of the same. You're all aware that there is a formula that is in the Constitution that is currently working at county level. And so we don't have the same for the National Assembly and the Senate. So this working group has recently just finished its work around engaging with stakeholders, public participation as per requirement of our Constitution, and has come up with a report proposing a framework for realization of the same. But you know that in terms of legislation, that is the work of Parliament. So the report was handed over officially to the appointing authority, who is the Cabinet Secretary, who subsequently forwarded the same to the speakers of the National Assembly and the Senate. So as we talk now, the report is actually in Parliament. Remember that the 2/3 issue was also one of the 5 issues of the National Dialogue Committee. And the National Dialogue Committee recommended that the multi-sectoral working group, which had been put in place before actually the National Dialogue Committee, goes ahead and finishes the work, and then that report would be part of the National Dialogue Committee. So as we speak now, the report is in Parliament, as I've mentioned, and we are looking forward to this time that the legislators will, debate on it favorably and pass it. And also for the first time, we have political goodwill. We've had the president pronouncing himself on the issue. We've had the various political leaders, including the opposition politicians, pronouncing themselves on the same. So we are just hopeful that this time we will get it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Director. And also asante sana to my panel and my wonderful audience. I believe today's conversation was very engaging, very insightful. So my 2 cents in today's conversation, and of course in the theme of this International Women's Day, is that women and girls hold unlimited potential, meaning that investing in women is not only a human rights imperative, but it is the cornerstone for building socially inclusive society. So let us shun some of these multifaceted barriers that are meant to stop women from getting financial independence and from also getting empowerment. Let us also remember that once you are able to uplift a woman, you uplift the society. So share with me your thoughts on this conversation, on any other conversation we've had, and on today's topic. We look forward to hearing from you across all our social media platforms at KBC Channel 1 and my personal pages at Ashiko the host. So on behalf of the team at KBC and our host for this episode, World Vision Kenya, myself Ashiko Mbune, I wish you all a lovely and empowering week. I will catch you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.